Aurora shooter, James Holmes, listened to testimony about his brutal massacre while family members in the courtroom sobbed on a day when still traumatized students in Newtown, Connecticut returned to school with their first Monday of the new year. This country is grappling with gun violence as never before. It's an issue you know I care passionately about, so here is my position, loud and clear. I'm in favour of a nationwide ban on military-style semi-automatic assault weapons and high-capacity magazines. I want to close the gun show loopholes and require private dealers to run background checks on buyers at gun shows. And I'd like to see the President increase federal funding for mental health treatment for all Americans who need it. I think these are entirely reasonable reactions to the outrages that have occurred in America over the last few months. But tonight, I'll go head-to-head with a man who actually wants to deport me for having these very views. And over 104,000 Americans apparently agree with him. That's coming up. We'll begin tonight with new details from inside the Colorado courtroom, where a preliminary hearing got underway today. For supporters of gun rights, and has led to a petition on the White House official website, no less. It's entitled, and I quote, "Deport British citizen Piers Morgan for attacking Second Amendment." Take a look. More than 104,000 people have signed it so far. And joining me now is one of the people behind the petition, Alex Jones. He's host of the Alex Jones Show. Welcome to you.
Piers, thanks for having me.
Why do you want to deport me?
Well, we did it as a way to bring attention to the fact that we have all of these foreigners and the Russian government, the official Chinese government. Mao said political power goes out of the barrel of a gun. He killed about 80 million people because he's the only guy that had the guns. So we did it to point out that this is globalism, and the mega banks that control the planet and brag that they've taken over, in Bloomberg, AP, Reuters, you name it, brag that they're going to get our guns as well. They've taken everybody's guns but the Swiss and the American people. And when they get our guns, they can have their world tyranny, while the government buys 1.6 billion bullets, armored vehicles, tanks, helicopters, Predator drones, armed, now in U.S. skies, being used to arrest people in North Dakota. The Second Amendment isn't there for duck hunting. It's there to protect us from tyrannical government and street thugs. Take the women in India. Your piece earlier on CNN I was watching during Anderson Cooper's show didn't tell you that the women of India have signed giant petitions to get firearms because the police can't and won't protect them. The answer is, hey, wait a minute, I have FBI crime statistics that come out a year late, 2011. 20+% crime drop in the last 9 years. Real violent crime, because more guns means less crime. Britain took the guns 15, 16 years ago, tripling of your overall violent crime. True, we have a higher gun violence level, but overall mugging, stabbings, deaths, those men raped that woman in India to death with an iron rod 4 feet long. You can't ban the iron rods. The guns, the iron rods, Pierce, didn't do it. The tyrants did it. Hitler took the guns. Stalin took the guns. Mao took the guns. Fidel Castro took the guns. Hugo Chavez took the guns. And I'm here to tell you, 1776 will commence again if you try to take our firearms. Doesn't matter how many lemmings you get out there on the street begging for them to have their guns taken. We will not relinquish them. Do you understand? That's why you're going to fail, and the establishment knows no matter how much propaganda, the Republic will rise again when you attempt to take our guns. My family in the Texas Revolution against Santa Anna, my family was at the core on both sides starting that, because Santa Anna came to take the guns at Gonzales, Texas. Pierce, don't try what your ancestors did before. Why don't you come to America? I'll take you out shooting. You can become an American and join the Republic.
You finished?
Yes, I am finished. You will not take my right. You go through background checks to get guns. How about Prozac? You know the number one. Oh, that's the big sponsor, isn't it? Or that whole class of drugs.
Let me ask you a question.
Oh, got to cut that off, don't you? Don't want to talk about the U.S. number one cause of death is suicide now, because they give people suicide mass murder pills.
Calm down.
Your answer is give more money to the psychiatrists and psychologists to put more crazy people on drugs that make them kill people, Pierce.
Let's try and have a debate here.
Yeah.
Answer me this question.
I'm sick of the same old script here, bud.
It's fine, bud. How many gun murders were there in America last year? Do you know?
There were about 11,458, and about 74% of those were gang-related, gangbangers shooting each other. You get 3,500 to 4,000.
Okay,
how many people died from infections in hospitals? 197,000.
Let me just ask you a second.
That's right.
How many gun murders were there in Britain?
How many great white sharks?
No, how many
kill people every year, but they're scared to swim?
Right. How many gun murders were there in Britain?
A very low amount. I already went over those statistics.
Many, do you know?
It was only a few hundred.
No. How many gun murders?
I actually did pull up the statistics. Here, let me pull them out right here. I figured you'd do that.
Gun murders last year.
UK violent crime, capital of Europe, London Telegraph. Here, let me give you more.
It's quite a simple question.
Well, that's the oldest.
You're a very loud man.
That's the oldest Perry Mason tactic to ask me some little factoid.
It's not a little factoid.
I already said earlier,
We're talking about
England has a lot lower gun crime rate because you took all the guns.
Let me try exactly my
But you've got hordes of people burning down cities and beating old women's brains out every day.
What a ridiculous
They arrest people in England if they defend themselves. That's on record. My God, you have got a total police state. Everybody's fleeing that country because you've had to flee here, bud. Why don't you tell folks? Yeah, you fled here. Why don't you go back and face the charges for the hacking scandal?
Answer this question. How many...
Why'd you get fired from the Daily Mirror for putting out fake stories? You're a hatchet man of the New World Order. Okay. You're a hatchet man. And I want to say this right here. You think you're a tough guy? Have me back with a boxing ring in here, and I'll wear red, white, and blue, and you can wear your Jolly Roger.
Okay.
You know what?
Let's try again. How many gun murders were there?
Oh, you're going to ban your fist now?
In Britain last year.
How many chimpanzees can dance on the head of a pin? I already went over those statistics.
Do you know the answer?
No, I don't.
You said hundreds.
It's very low.
You said hundreds.
Yes.
It's actually 35.
Well, the point is you can...
Against 11,000. Do you understand the difference between 11,000
Yeah, England wants
35?
to ban knives now because tens of thousands are getting stabbed.
Right. But do you understand the difference?
The knife doesn't kill people.
Do you understand?
The gun doesn't kill people.
Yes.
Listen, do you understand
between 35
you're not going to pull on America's heartstrings. They know your script, okay? You're not going to get our guns. By the way, you guys always say, we just want to take the semi-autos, okay, and all this other stuff. When semi-autos aren't even, rifles aren't even used but in a fraction of the crimes, you can pull those numbers up. Okay? No, hold on.
Let me ask you one question. Which weapon was predominantly used in the Aurora movie theatre shooting?
M4 AR-15 variants.
So it was a semi-automatic assault rifle.
Again.
Okay.
But statistically, it's very, very low.
Do you agree it was the single biggest shooting in the history of America in terms of people hit by a shooter? Do you know that?
No, I believe that there were others. There's been some other shootings with about over 30.
No. This was the single biggest mass shooting.
Well, listen, you're just going... No, there have been bombings of Wall Street.
Let me ask you a second question.
Are we going to... Listen, why can't the pilots have firearms? We trust them to fly the planes.
Alex, you've had a lot to say.
No, my point is the Second Amendment is sacrosanct, and you're not getting it.
Do you know which weapon was used in the Oregon shopping mall mass shooting recently?
I understand that people who are mentally ill on all the serotonin reuptake inhibitors who play these shoot-em-up games want to go out and do this. Because there's criminals, I don't lose my rights, Piers. Because there's criminals, I don't lose my rights.
Just answer the question.
Yeah.
Do you know what the weapon used was?
Listen, let me ask you a question. I've got the FBI statistics that, that these so-called semi-autos that you talk about.
Let's take a break. When we come back.
Again, you're not going to get our guns.
When we come back, try and answer my question.
Yeah, all you're going to do is sit there and play little factoid questions. Overall crime's gone up over 20%. More
Back now with Alex Jones. A man says I should be deported for my stand on guns. So, Alex, here's how this is going to work, and it's entirely down to you. I'm going to ask you some questions. In the spirit of a proper debate, and you've had a lot to say so far on the show, a lot of it aimed at me, which is fine. But I want you to try and answer the questions. It's a proper debate, okay? I'm not trying to trip you up.
No, it's not a debate. You're running the show. You bring in your victims up front.
Actually, no.
Look, you got your little note cards.
Okay.
I just gave you FBI statistics that violent crime and gun crime is down over 20%.
Alex, let me just ask you
And you want to go to little factoids.
No, they're not little
Anybody can pull those up. Listen.
Do you know what...
Do you have a bodyguard?
Alex.
Why do you have bodyguards?
I don't have a bodyguard.
Yeah, I've seen you on the news with them. Don't you want to protect your wife from hoodlums, or you want to call the police?
Let me ask you this question.
Why does Dianne Feinstein tell 60 Minutes that she plans to try to take Mr. and Mrs. America's guns?
Stop
Have you seen that
over me.
You guys want to disarm all of America.
No, I don't.
Dianne Feinstein's bill does gun confiscation.
No, let me clarify for you. You don't seem to understand.
First you register, then you confiscate. It's always done the same.
Here's what the campaign on this...
Well, here, give me your little cue cards and I'll answer your questions for you.
What was the weapon used at Sandy Hook?
I've already gone over that and already answered it for you.
We haven't talked about Sandy Hook.
No, again,
what was the weapon?
It's a 223 M4.
Right.
Again, but statistically, they're using very low percentage of shootings.
But
period.
Are you
but
seeing?
You guys,
are you seeing
people wouldn't go swimming because the movie Jaws, even though great white sharks kill 5 people a year.
Alex,
you're trying to scare people.
Let me say something.
There's no metal shark in the water.
The same type of weapon was used in the last 3 mass shootings.
And Hitler used semi-autos to kill people.
Why would you
and
not?
So did Mao.
Why would you?
Why is the government arming to the teeth against us?
Alex, I don't.
What about Fast and Furious?
Alex,
why do our government ship guns into Mexico?
Alex,
to blame the Second Amendment?
Let's have a debate.
A false flag?
Alex,
to blame the Second Amendment?
I get accused.
Why they blow up Building 7 down the street here in New York?
I get accused when I get you guys on of talking over you, of being rude. I'm trying to be civil. Right? You've got to try and answer some of the questions, right? Here's my issue for you. Why do people civilians need an AR-15 type assault rifle?
Okay, I already said statistically they're used in a very low amount of the crimes. That's an FBI fact.
They've been used in the last 3 mass shootings.
Yes.
Why?
I'll tell you why. Because they advertise it in the media. Anybody knows that if somebody jumps off the Empire State Building, they put cops up there the next day because copycats come to do it again. The media hypes and hypes and hypes.
That's all the question.
Don't just commit suicide.
Alex, why do people
commit suicide by killing a bunch of kids, and here's the gun to use because it's the one the U.S. Army uses.
Why do people need them?
They need them to protect us from the #1 killer in history. Government in the 20th century, university study out of Hawaii killed 292 million people. It's called democide. Google it, folks.
Do you believe everyone in America should everyone in America therefore have an AR-15 if they want one?
Statistically, where there's more guns, there's lower crime. The highest crime is in Bloomberg,
But you have the most
controlled
guns
areas.
of any of the 23 richest countries in the world, and you have
Well, America was born on guns and whiskey.
Right. But
it's true we're a violent society.
Right. So you
but
said that America has the most
knives kill 3 times more. Have you seen the FBI numbers? Knives, bats, rocks kill many times more.
Alex, let's talk about the gun.
It's not the rock. It's not the knife. When a mother chops her kids up with a cleaver because she's on serotonin.
Tell me why I'm wrong.
Why don't you want to get rid of the drugs? Because they're half your sponsors?
No, stick to the subject.
America's #1 cause of unnatural death now is suicide.
Alex,
not automobile accident, not cancer,
You accuse me of attacking the Second Amendment of the Constitution.
I want to get people off pills that the insert says will make you commit suicide and kill people.
Alex, let's get about to the Second
I want to blame the real culprit. Suicide pills. Mass murder pills.
Okay, let me ask you one question. Your belief, unless I'm wrong.
First time anybody's ever heard this, by the way.
Your belief, unless I'm wrong, is that under the Second Amendment, your real concern is that you will be overrun by a tyrannical regime, either from somewhere else.
Yeah, highway checkpoints. Look at Mexico. Total gun ban for the citizens. Highest crime rate in the world. 57,000 people dead the last 5 years. Total gun ban for the citizens.
But
Switzerland has the lowest crime rate in Europe. Your country has the highest.
Alex, we have 35 gun murders a year, 11,000.
You people get their brains. It's the higher crime rate.
Let me ask
Violent crime is higher.
On this specific...
It's brains.
Alex,
it's people.
I'm trying to get inside your brain.
Pierce,
if
you punch me right now, it'd be not your fist, but your brain that did it.
Let me get inside your brain.
Okay.
Okay? I'm serious. You have a very, very big platform. You air, I think, on 63 networks.
No, that Wikipedia is like 10 years old. I'm on over 140 stations. XM.
Millions of Americans hear you.
Over 1.5 million visitors to Infowars.com today. Where we have the statistics posted right now. Infowars.com.
Who do you believe was behind 9/11?
Oh, I absolutely know. I have the police on CNN saying, get back, they're going to blow up 7. I have BBC reporting.
Who do you believe is behind
I have the proof. I heard them on CBS Radio.
Who, Alex?
They announced they blew up the towers on CBS Radio. New Yorkers all saw it and heard it.
Alex, who do you
believe?
They
blew up Building 7.
Alex, who do you believe was behind it? The American government?
Criminal elements of the military-industrial complex, the same ones that staged Gulf of Tonkin, the same ones that staged the mass shootings of Operation Gladio.
Right.
Ooh, the CIA don't like this now.
Do you mean that President Bush and his administration were behind 9/11?
I mean that even mainstream news reported that the hijackers were ordered to be allowed into the United States. Michael Springman, the head of the Visa Department, blew the whistle on that.
So the Bush administration was part of a conspiracy
to he should never let us tolerate
to murder
Americans speak in this accent as well.
Yeah.
The
but is that
government,
what you believe?
Hitler firebombed his own Reichstag, Pierce, to bring in martial law in Germany, April 27th, 1933. Governments have staged terror attacks throughout history or allowed terrorists to attack as a pretext to invade and enslave populations. I probably own more than 50 firearms. Many of them have increased in value 2, 3, or even 4 times. I sleep very comfortably outside Austin, Texas, knowing that I can defend my family.
Okay, Alex Jones.
Infowars.com.
This is the man who wants to deport me from the country for wanting to get rid of
No, it's to point out you're a foreigner, a redcoat, here telling us what to do.
Whatever.
Go back to where they took the guns if you don't like.
Afterwords, who's agreed to defend me from deportation. Very kind of you. I think you defended John Lennon, no less. Interesting encounter there with Alex Jones. He's the guy behind this petition to have me deported. He's really one of the reasons why I'm so concerned about the lack of gun control in America. He's a man that owns 50 weapons. He has a sort of pathological view about it. He seems unhinged to me. The irony of these gun rights guys saying to me that I'm rude to them won't be lost on my regular viewers, I'm sure. I try to stay calm, and really there's no other way of dealing with him, because he's just a sort of ranting guy who doesn't want anybody to grab his guns, but no sense of awareness about the wider issue of a particular type of weapon being used to commit these mass outrages.
Well, we lawyers refer to people like that not as witnesses, but as exhibits. He was an exhibit, like a piece of evidence. You just see him speaking, and you say to yourself, I don't want that man to have a gun. I wouldn't feel comfortable having an argument with him in his home where he had access to his 50 weapons. And if he got really mad at something I said, or if I disputed his contentions, or I told him he was lying about the FBI statistics and that he was lying about the claim more guns equal less crime, I would be worried he would grab for his semi-automatic and try to resolve it.
What really would concern me about somebody like him is the amount of influence he has, a growing influence. As he boasted, he's got millions of people listening to him. Some of his YouTube rants have got tens of millions of people watching them. And he foments this fear of a tyrannical regime, and that is why everyone in America needs to be armed with AR-15s. And it's the stuff of nonsense, isn't it? I mean,
well,
the
it's
idea
much more dangerous than nonsense. I mean, he was essentially comparing President Bush to Adolf Hitler.
Yeah.
He was saying that somebody, the criminal elements within our banks, the Bloombergs, the national
here's
banks.
The point about it. Yeah. You can't dismiss him as just a crackpot, because millions of Americans tune into him now on a daily basis and believe what he says.
Let me tell you,
that is why, to me, he's a very relevant guest here, and he perfectly exemplifies the problem.
But the reason you perform such a great service by having him on is he usually preaches to his own little paranoid choir. People who listen to him are either listening to him for entertainment purposes, the way I sometimes listen to Rush Limbaugh, or because they really believe it. Now, you
we had a little exchange, actually.
To a general audience.
This is a little exchange that happened just right at the end here, which others haven't seen yet.
And I'm here to tell you, 1776 will commence again if you try to take our firearms. Doesn't matter how many lemmings you get out there on the street begging for them to have their guns taken. We will not relinquish them. Do you understand? That's why you're going to fail, and the establishment knows, no matter how much propaganda, the Republic will rise again when you attempt to take our guns.
You see, when you have this debate on the East Coast or even the West Coast, I find that a lot of Americans come up to me and they're totally behind what I'm trying to do, which is a very specific thing. It's not about taking away his right to defend himself or his family at home or to grab anybody's guns other than these military-style assault weapons. But he doesn't want to hear any of the nuances of the debate. He couldn't tell me how many people get murdered by guns in Britain.
Because he doesn't want to hear the other side of the story.
Answer. He knows it's very, very low. He doesn't want to hear it.
And one thing I would suggest is it's time for us, everybody hates commissions, but it's time for us to have a commission of 10 great distinguished scientists to put the lie to this notion that more guns, less crime. I know the statistics. I know the FBI data. I teach it. But most Americans believe the NRA propaganda. The NRA buys scholars.
And it's
they buy statistics, but it's just wrong.
Lies.
It's total lies.
It is total lies. Britain has strong gun control, for example, and averages 35 gun murders a year. America has very lax gun control and has 11,000. Britain is about a fifth of the size of America. I can do simple maths. Japan has the toughest gun control in the world. They have 2 or 3 murders a year. Australia had a massacre in the 90s. They brought in a ban on all main high-powered guns and assault rifles and so on. They've had no mass shooting since. This is not rocket science. It is there to be had. The problem is that the NRA, and I'm sure that Mr. Jones is a big fan of theirs and probably helps them.
Oh, he probably thinks they're way, way, way too much part of the establishment.
Right,
He's way, way to the right
in this
of the
country
NRA.
is the political power the NRA now wield means that politicians are too cowed to say anything. I mean, I have people say to me, "You're so brave." What is brave about wanting to stop 20 more children getting murdered?
I don't think you're right about that. I don't think it's the NRA power. I think it's people like us, and not the two of us, but Americans who care about guns aren't doing enough to make our case to the public.
But why not?
Because we think it's their issue. We've given that issue over to them because they have lobbyists, they pay money. But in the end, the people determine the outcome. And it's wrong, and it's racist, and it's bigoted to say that guns are quintessentially American. They may represent a part of America, but my grandparents who came over from Poland and lived in Brooklyn, New York, are just as much Americans. People who came over from Ireland, people who came over from Italy, we're just as much Americans if we live on the coasts. And we have a right to define the America that we want to live in, and we have the obligation to win politically, to vote for people to put gun control as a high priority. They put it as a #1 priority. We who favor gun control put it as a 16th or 17th priority. So it's our fault, not the NRA's
And the
fault.
important thing of getting people like Alex Jones on this show is to hear him actually say that he believed President Bush, the American administration under him, were responsible for 9/11, and that is why he wants Americans armed to defend themselves against that kind of murderous tyranny. And it's the most dangerous rhetoric I have heard in a very long time.
But it's very important that he be exposed on your show, because decent Americans don't want to be associated with that kind of paranoid view of American history. They don't want to believe that our government is capable of engaging in the kind of tyranny that he fears. Government does a great deal of good for people. Yes, there are reasons to constrain government. That's why we have the Bill of Rights. The Second Amendment is part of the Bill of Rights. Justice Scalia, who wrote the opinion, said very clearly the Second Amendment permits for reasonable regulation, for prevention of people like him from getting guns, for prevention of crazy people with long records, criminal records from getting guns. We have to do more to fulfill what the real meaning of the Second Amendment is: reasonable access to guns for self-protection and for hunting. And there's no room in America for these semi-automatic, automatic, and other kinds of weapons that are simply designed to create mass havoc.
See, I believe that an increasing majority of Americans do not agree with the likes of Alex Jones. I think they realize a tipping point has been reached. When you have a movie theater shot up and then a school, an elementary school, enough is enough. And they mustn't let the agenda be driven by people like him.
And when the NRA gets up and says the solution to it is to arm teachers in elementary schools and to give kids guns and to load our
Create
society
the Wild
up with
West.
guns,
It's lunacy.
We don't want to live in that
Alan,
America.
thank you so much for coming in.
You.
When we come back, a man who truly does believe the solution to gun violence is yet more guns. Sheriff Joe Arpaio, on why he wants armed volunteers outside schools.
Someone who believes that having multiple armed guards in every school is something that will enhance the learning environment. And that's our first responsibility inside a school, is the learning environment. You don't want to make this an armed camp for kids. I don't think that's a positive example for children. We should be able to figure out some other ways to enhance safety.
New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, my next guest, says armed guards are exactly what America's schools need next. In the wake of the massacre at Sandy Hook Elementary School, Sheriff Joe Arpaio of Maricopa County in Arizona has called for armed volunteers to patrol around 50 schools under his jurisdiction. And the sheriff joins us now. Welcome to you, Sheriff.
How you doing, Piers?
Explain to me why you believe that the answer to these gun massacres is to have a lot more guns?
Well, you know, I'm not going to get into that. We have many, many laws pertaining to guns already. We ought to enforce those laws. But I'm taking immediate action. I have a volunteer posse made up of 3,500 are armed, well-trained, 100 hours of training. We just finished another program at the malls, very successful. So why not utilize and mobilize the posse, which a sheriff can do, in the perimeters? I don't believe in putting the posse in the schools, but protect the kids and the teachers by outside patrol, visible, deterrence, and keep these bad guys out of the schools.
At Columbine, you'll be aware, there was an armed sheriff. 12 students got killed, and a teacher. At Fort Hood, which is one of the most protected army bases in the world, 13 people were killed, 29 wounded. At Virginia Tech, there were a number of armed security people. Why on earth do you think that these patrolmen, as you put it, who you've just taken off the streets and given a bit of training to, could do any better?
Well, we don't pick them off the streets. They're well-trained, and they have the authority under this sheriff. Nothing is perfect. Look at Norway. You remember the massacre in Norway that don't even allow guns? So you never can say everything is perfect, but you sure can take action, try to deter any operation. Don't surrender. Don't just talk about it, that every politician seems to be doing. Get something done. So that's what I'm doing.
What about this old quaint idea? What about taking guns off the streets rather than flooding the streets with more guns?
Well, I don't know. We have a Second Amendment. You know, you've been through this, many conversations about this. You have a First Amendment. There's a Second Amendment. But guns do not kill. People kill. We just had 2 murders, my office investigated by knives. Should we take all the knives away? I mean, where do you draw the line?
Well, I suppose where you draw... Here's my point, Sheriff. Here's my point, which I tried to make to Alex Jones, but he was ranting too loudly to really focus on what I was saying. In Britain, we had a
Don't take it out on me.
No, I won't. In Britain, we had a very similar massacre in Dunblane in Scotland in 1996. As a result, as I'm sure you know, a national handgun ban was brought in, and it also banned all automatic and most semi-automatic rifles as well. So it would have banned the weapons that have been used at Aurora, at Sandy Hook, and the Oregon shopping mall, and others. And since then, there's been no single shooting at a school in Britain. There have been 2 smaller massacres in that period, both by people who actually had licenses for these arms. But in the main, Britain has been almost gun murder free, and it averages about 35 gun murders a year, as I tried to tell Alex Jones. In America, where you have 300 million firearms in circulation, and you have extraordinarily lax gun control, you have between 11 and 12,000 gun murders a year. Now, Britain is just a fifth of the size of America. 5 times 35 is not 11,000. So clearly, America has a particular problem. It has by far the greatest number of gun murders of any of the 23 richest countries in the world. So again, I put my question to you really is this. Why do people keep propagating a myth that more guns means less gun murder?
Yeah, but Piers, why are you comparing your country with the United States? I believe we have 350 million people that live in this country. I was in London, for your information. I spent a week with BBC. They were following me around on how we operate our jails, but I brought up the gun issue. The media didn't even want to address the gun issue when I said the bobbies should be armed too, because things are changing in England. But nobody wants to talk about it in England, which is really strange. You're talking about it. I'm glad you are.
It's not that strange. The situation hasn't changed because actually the number of gun murders hasn't changed. We can talk about lots of things wrong with my country. You know, there's terrible problems with knife crime, with obesity, with gang violence, all sorts of social ills. I'm not claiming my country's perfect at all, but I can tell you one thing we got right. When a load of school children were massacred by a madman with a gun, we banned guns in my country, and I'm very proud of those politicians and of the public for rising as one, left and right, it wasn't a particular issue, and getting something done that has meant there's been no school shooting since. There probably will be in the future, but by God, we made it difficult. And what I don't see in America is any collective will by the people who run this country, including yourself, to try and make it more difficult for people who are disturbed to get their hands on these AR-15 style, military style assault weapons, which are killing machines.
Well, I think Smith & Wesson's 6-cylinders killed too. But this is the Second Amendment. We do follow the Constitution in this country, and that's the way it is. If you don't like it, go change the laws. I'm here to enforce the laws. I'm doing the best I can to enforce the laws and protect the people of this county, Maricopa County. Now, if you want to change laws and everything else, okay. By the way, I know you're going to say something about this, but tomorrow is the year anniversary where my deputy sheriff was gunned down with a assault rifle. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to arm every one of my deputy sheriffs with automatic and semi-automatic weapons. They're going to defend themselves against anybody that tries to kill my deputies, whether it's with a gun, a knife, or a bomb.
Okay, Sheriff, that's entirely your prerogative. As you say, until the laws change, you are perfectly entitled to arm everybody you like in your jurisdiction with AR-15s. And if that's your decision, and you think that's the answer to America's gun problem, then that is entirely a matter for you. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
We now have some breaking news. The White House has just responded to the petition to deport me from my stand on guns from Press Secretary Jay Carney. He says, I quote, "The White House responds to all petitions that cross the threshold, which is 25,000, and we will respond to this one. In the meantime, it's worth remembering that freedom of expression is a bedrock principle in our democracy." So there we have it. Not deported just yet. When we come back, America's leading political family, the Kennedys, know all too well the deadly toll of gun violence. Patrick Kennedy and Christopher Kennedy Lawford are here to talk about that and about how this country deals with mental illness.
Where's my money? We have a completely cracked mentally ill system that's got these monsters walking the streets, and we've got to deal with the underlying causes and connections if we're ever going to get to the truth in this country and stop this.
The NRA's Wayne Lapierre talking about mental health and guns. Joining me now, two men who have a lot to say on both those issues. Former Congressman Patrick Kennedy and Christopher Kennedy Lawford, author of Recover to Live, conversations with 100 of the world's top treatment experts. Welcome to you both.
Thanks, man.
Two Kennedys. I mean, I can't think of two better people to ask about this debate. And your reaction, I guess, immediately to the interview I had with Alex Jones. What did you feel?
It was disheartening, I think. I think just to see the anger there. And also, he kept talking about the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment, Thomas Jefferson, who wrote the Second Amendment, said that it should be revisited every 20 years to see if it's still appropriate. I mean, this is something that was written a long time ago. And he probably doesn't even know what the real intent of the Second Amendment was. So for him to quote this and just the absolute vitriol that is there is really disheartening.
I was just disturbed. Disturbed as a human being that this is what our civil discourse has come to. What makes our country so great is that we're about passing power peacefully, not violently. And in my last year as a member of Congress, I'd say perhaps half of the members of Congress had to live wearing bulletproof vests and have armed guards.
Really?
During the aftermath of Obamacare, when the president was being held in effigy, and these kinds of threatening comments of people like the man you just had on were blocking members of Congress from being able to go and vote. You may recall of that.
Yep.
And people like John Lewis were being called epithets, racial epithets. And this wasn't just isolated. This was happening both in our nation's capital and around the country. We've had a devolving of this civil discourse in our country, whether it's guns or it's this issue of mental health or anything that's a hot button issue where we can't talk to one another. And that, I think, is the more disruptive, disturbing thing that, I felt threatened when he was threatening you. And the fact that we're not thinking about one another in those ways, he was assaulting your human dignity as a human.
I mean, personally, I never felt threatened by him. What I felt was, it was one of those interviews where you want to let him talk, because getting inside the mind of a man who has, he has millions of people that listen to him every week and believe what he says. There is a sort of leading commentator in American society actually saying the American government under President Bush ordered 9/11. I mean, this is the stuff of madness.
It's scary, and I mean, I think the underlying thing is when you're talking about the guns with being able to be purchased by people who have underlying mental illness, and I've written this book that's about addiction. 50 to 70% of the people that present with addictive disease or mental illness have the other. So we're talking about some really some ill folks who are able to get weapons of mass destruction, really.
And that's what these weapons are. I mean, this is what I find so disturbing about the debate. People like Alex Jones, the NRA and others, they shout so loudly and so regularly, they cloud the debate and frame it in the way they'd like it to be. They're trying to grab our guns, Second Amendment, all this kind of stuff. I don't want to change the Second Amendment. I don't want to change an American's right to bear an arm at their home to defend people. I want to get rid of these killing machine assault weapons off the street. Get rid of them.
When you have Sheriff Arpaio say, guns don't kill people, people kill people. Yeah, try killing that many people in such a short amount of time with a hammer or a knife.
Well, we know how... in the same week as Sandy Hook, a madman in China attacked a school and he stabbed 22 of the children. They all lived. That's all you need to know. Had he had a gun, they'd all be dead. Of course, guns kill. That is their only purpose.
I also think, Patrick and I we come from a family where gun violence definitely affected us. And it affected the people immediately, but it affects a family for generations. People that have been gunned down in these places like Aurora and at Sandy Hook, those people will be affected for generations. And to see the lack of compassion by folks who are demanding their right to be able to have these guns for those that are suffering is
Are you surprised that following the assassinations of John F. Kennedy, of Bobby Kennedy, that we are in a position in America now where these kind of lawless mass shootings are happening with regularity and no one is doing much about it?
Well, as I said, I think the lack of discourse, so that is really what's offensive in our country, where we should be able to debate our problems without impugning the integrity of the people who have positions. And I think we need to have a more fundamental discussion because our whole democratic system is falling apart as a country. We cannot understand and bridge the divide between us. And that leaves us to fight each other and look at in an antagonizing way of each other as enemies. I think that's a fundamental problem. I think this gun issue is sparking this. But you can see all around our democracy is in peril right now. And it's that kind of fear, vitriol, paranoia that's substituting for debate.
And it has very real consequences because what happens, as we saw in December, is that America then has a surge in sales of these assault weapons and ammunition. Look, I could talk to you guys all night about this. I've got to go, unfortunately. It's a terrific book. Recover to Live, Kick Any Habit, Manage Any Addiction. Christopher Kennedy, lawful, great to see you.
Thank you, Piers.
It's a really terrific book.
Thank you so much.
Great to see you again. God bless. We'll be right back. For those who may not have heard earlier, I want to go back to our own breaking news tonight. The White House has responded to the petition to deport me for my stand on guns. Press Secretary Jay Carney says the White House responds to all petitions that cross the threshold, and we will respond to this one. In the meantime, it's worth remembering that freedom of expression is a bedrock principle in our democracy. So I guess my future here is in the hands of President Obama. That's all for us tonight. AC360 starts right now.